Hello, YouTube coin collectors and stackers. Today we're going to be talking about the 2024 Denver nickel and is it worth all of the hype? There's obviously a lot of people looking for this, searching for it online. You see stackers pulling these things out of box roll hunts and nickel roll hunts. We see them selling on eBay for, gosh, I think I saw the other day a roll of 2024 Denver nickels sold for over $250. And, that starts to get your attention. You go, holy cow, have we seen this before? I'll link to some other videos where I talk about trends over time related to, say, the 1950 Denver nickel and in other places where we had a lot of hype and a lot of zeitgeist and prices went up, 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 only to crash, crash, crash later. So we're going to kind of take a walk through the history of nickels, and we're going to see, how did nickels come to be? Where have we seen other places in history where these things have shot up and then corrected down? So firstly, what is a nickel? Well, for many people, they've never seen a 3-cent nickel. And a 3-cent nickel came out about the same time as a 5-cent nickel. Now, throughout the history of our country, we've only had a few nickels. We've had the 3-cent nickel, this shield nickel, which followed then the Liberty or V nickel, followed by the Buffalo nickel, followed by the Jefferson nickel, and with some minor changes here and there, the Jefferson nickel, it's been with us since 1938. So there's not a lot of nickels when we look back over the history. There's a lot more dimes, there's a lot more different types of quarters and stuff when we look back through history, but nickels not so much. So how did the nickel come into being? Well, turns out that round about 1864 or so, there was a gentleman named Joseph Wharton. And what Joseph Wharton did is he purchased a nickel mine that was in Pennsylvania. And he proposed, he needed a market for his nickels. And if you look at the history of Morgan dollars, for example, silver interests needed a market for their silver, right? And that was the Bland-Allison Act that resulted in all those Morgan dollars that we so enjoy. Well, this gentleman named Joseph Wharton in 1863 purchased this nickel mine in Lancaster Gap, Pennsylvania. And he soon published this pamphlet called The Project for Reorganizing Small Coinage of the United States of America. And in this pamphlet, he recommended that the use of nickel be increased in all of these coins. And he proposed denominations of 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, 5 cents, and 10 cents, all being made with this alloy of 25% nickel, 75% copper. So one of the interesting things about this nickel down here, this shield nickel, and a 2024 Denver nickel, or any 2024 nickel, or any nickel since, is that this alloy combination has been the alloy combination used in nickels, 25% nickel, 75% copper, since nickels were first made, all the way back in like 1865 when the 3-cent nickel was introduced, and in 1866 when the 5-cent nickel was introduced. So as we start looking back over, so that's where the nickel came from. So the term nickel simply means that it's 25% nickel, and it's the only coin that stayed this same alloy composition, circulating coin I should say, for as long as it has, right? So the silver came out of our circulating coinage in 1965. And so the nickel's the only one that hasn't changed. So there's our first original 2 nickels. And there's various, let me get these out of the ring light. There's various, years and so of those proofs and other things that are really interesting. You can see this one here is actually a proof 65. And what I want to talk about is sort of the rarity of some of these things. So this 1879 3-cent nickel only has a mintage of 3,200. And there's no telling how many of these survive today. Probably most of them, since they were made for collectors and sold at a premium. But 3,200. And we're talking about let's just set the table here. For this nickel here, the 2024 Denver, it's around 32 million of these. So 3,200, 32 million. So what can one of these beautiful proof nickels be had for? Well, I just played my hand. I didn't pay that for it. I paid a little less than that. But one of these beautiful nickels can be yours for around $450 to $500 in a proof 65. This gentleman here, which is a 1868 shield nickel, had 28,817,000. So that's less than the 2024 Denver. This one, of course, is an AU details. It's cleaned, and you can certainly see the cleaning on it. It's very, very light, but it's there. But it's also got some interesting things like the DDO and the Repunched Mint Mark. And the DDO on this one's pretty cool. I'm not really going to be able to show it to you in the video today just because it's very, very slight. But as we move through the history of nickels, we come across this very, very storied nickel. And it's the 1883 no cents nickel. And here's a Mint State 62 version of that in an old Rattler, which we love our old Rattler, some of us. And you can see down here, it doesn't say nickel. So this nickel comes out, and it's worth pointing out that this 3-cent nickel doesn't say nickel on it either. It's just got the Roman numeral 3. So they thought for this one, Charles Barber was like, well, we'll just slap on a Roman numeral 5, and everyone will know it's 5 cents. Well, unfortunately, there was some hucksters that decided that, hey, you know what? If we gold plate these, we could pass them off as 5-cent gold pieces. They were about the same size as a gold piece. And there was a gentleman, I think his name was Josh something. You guys can put it down in the details. And this whole concept, if you've ever heard the term, I'm joshing you, or you've been joshed, it has to do with this gentleman who was a deaf mute who would gold plate these, walk into a store, buy something for 5 cents, hand them one of these gold plated nickels, and then they would give him back $4.95 in change. Now think back in 1883, $4.95 was a lot. You know, a day's labor was maybe $1. You got paid $1 for a day's labor back in those days. So that was, a week's wages if you could pull this off time and time again. And even this one, this is a gold-plated one. It's called a racketeer nickel. And these are easy to pick up. You can pick this up for about $15. This guy right here. So the mintage on this, 5,474,300. An old green Rattler MS62. That's $75 or $80 for this. This one kind of beat up old racketeer nickel, $15. So again, we're thinking about, okay, what's going on with the 2024 Denver? So after our 1883 no-cent nickel, which was designed by Mr. Charles Barber, and all of these fake racketeer nickels are starting to course through the economy, the mint has this sort of existential crisis. It says, oh my God, we got to do something. We got to add cents. So in 1883, they minted this nickel here, which is the 1883 with cents. And you can see it there. I'll kind of get it under the light. You can see cents under the V there, and this one's got no cents. So they crank these out, and they mint 16,026,200 of these to 5,474,300 of these. And here's the interesting thing. So when it was discovered that people were passing these off as fake gold coins, fake $5 gold coins, rumors circulated around that these are going to be confiscated by the Treasury. So people hid them and hoarded them. And then this one enters the scene with the cents. It's got a slightly rotated reverse, you can see as we flip it over, which was not uncommon for, coins during this period. And no one cared about this one. So it just sort of circulated about and whatever while people were hoarding away this one. So this one with a mintage of 5.5 million, this one with over 3 times the mintage, which one's more valuable today? Well, actually, this one is. On average, an 1883 with cents nickel trades for 3 to 4 times more than an 1883 no cents nickel. Why? No one saved these. Everybody saved these. So as we move on, we start to move up later in the ranks, and we go to another Liberty V nickel, very common. Here's a 1906. This one's kind of a lower grade MS61, but it's still a pretty coin. In 1906, they made 38,612,000 of these. So kind of right in there with what we're seeing for the mintage on the 2024. It's slightly higher than the 2024 Denver. It's about where the 2024 Philly is. It's right in that range. And so this guy here, almost 120 years later, you can pick this one up for, somewhere between $90 and $100. As we continue on in time, I'm going to bring another proof into the picture here. So here is a 1910 proof 63 proof Liberty V nickel. And this 1910 proof nickel only had 2,405. So again, 32 or so million, right? We don't know because they're not finished up the year. They might make more of these. 2,405 of these guys, I should say, pretty ladies. So when we look at that and you go, okay, well, what can you get one of these for? Well, this is about a $300 coin. But, when you talking about percentages of mintage, this is like, 0.00 point whatever percent of the Denver nickel from 2024. So about $300 for one of these, which I think is a steal, actually. You think about 2,405 of these was all that were made. And who knows how many actually survived. Probably most of them, again, because they were made for collectors. Now we get into a really, really interesting coin. And I have a couple of examples of it. It's a 1912 S Liberty nickel. And this one's obviously a VG10 PCGS. This one's probably like a 12 or 15. It's got a little more detail in it. This one's actually for sale on my eBay store. For anyone who's interested, I'll put the link in the description down below. But if you look at these two guys, we only had in 1912 in San Francisco 238,000 of these made. So think about like the 1916 Denver Mercury dime that had 268,000. You'd be like a VG10 on one of those, a couple $1,000. This, about $170. Again, why? People tended to save these. But that's an incredibly low mintage. 238,000 of these. And you can get one in a VG10 for around like I said, about $170. A 15 like this will probably run you closer to like 240. But again, just a fraction of what we're looking at for this year's nickel mintage. Now we're going to fast forward all the way to 1938, to the 1938 Buffalo nickel. Very common in high grades like this MS66. Beautiful coin. And you can pick up one of these, 7,020,000 minted, for about $110. So we're talking about, 1/5 the mintage of the 2024 Denver nickel. And you can, 90 years later, hereabouts, you can correct me in the comments, $110 for one of those. And then in the same year, so in the second part of 1938, enters the Jefferson nickel. And the Jefferson nickel, as we all know, has been with us in one form or another since 1938. Yes, there's been some changes along the way, but more or less, we still have a Jefferson nickel in circulation. And again, that Jefferson nickel in circulation is 25% nickel, 75% copper, exactly as it was in 1866. Hasn't changed. So enter this 1938 San Francisco minted nickel. Mintage, $4,105,000. Slabbed by NGC MS66, $30. $30. And this is a beautiful coin. It's not a full steps coin, but it does have most of the steps on the back, but still, obviously it's more if you get a full steps. So let's take out another proof. Here is a proof 65 type 2. So this is a silver war nickel, but this is a proof silver war nickel. Mintage, 27,600. And I think Daniel on Coin Help You pointed this out. In fact, his video was the reason I went out and found one of these to buy. Is he stated that this is the only proof that actually has a P on it. And he's, kind of wondering why these aren't trading for more. Again, 27,600 on this one. Pick one up for about $100. Staying in the same year, let's just go to a circulation strike. MS65 full steps, type 2. And you're going to pick this one up. Mintage 57,873. Full steps, $70. Moving on to our story, 1950 Denver MS66 5 full steps. Now, this isn't 6 full steps. It'd be worth a bit more, but 5 steps, it's worth, right around $55. Lowest mintage circulation, Jefferson nickel, 2,630,030 of these were minted. And so this is considered the key date in the series. You're talking, again, just a fraction of what we're minting this year, $55 with 5 full steps in a fairly nice state. We're going to fast forward all the way to our next key date, which is our 2009. And I have a Philly and a Denver here. The Philly had 39,840,000, 46,800,000, which is higher than what we're seeing in 2024. Graded MS65, you can pick these up for like $3 to $5. Finally, we're going to get to a fairly low mint. This is a proof, the only one from West Point, hand signed by Donna Weaver. Gem proof, first W Mint Mark nickel, 465,080. Slab by NGC, gem proof, $22. And then finally, we arrive at our star of the show, which we've done a lot of videos on lately just because it's so topical and everyone's wondering. So this is the one I found in circulation. I'll post the video, I'll post a link to that video down below so you can see I went through 2 boxes of nickels, hunted 4,000 nickels, and found a single 2024 Denver. These ones I actually bought on eBay. These 2 went into my album, and I kept the rest of these in reserve. So I have 3 more Denvers and 3 Phillies sitting in here as well. So kind of a long video today, but I wanted to take you through the history of nickels and just look at the fact that while, 32 million, 35 million, 38 million, 40 million, wherever it settles at, and it may be settled, they may not make any more, but wherever this settles at, if every single one is being pulled out of circulation, they're being sold by the roll for hundreds of dollars. When we start to look forward in time, and I look back at the fact that 1950 nickels sold for a inflation-adjusted equivalent of about $220, $250 in today's money, only to crash all the way back down, but you can get an unslab one for 15 or 20 bucks. You start to see this zeitgeist coinage taking effect. You see it with the W quarters from 2019 and privy quarters from 2020 from the West Point Mint. We don't see it so much with 2009s as much, but with the 2020s, it's pretty crazy. So what will happen with these over time? We have a lot of history here. We have nickels from the 1879 3 cent of 3,200, 1910 proof, 2,400. The 1912 S, which was a circulation strike, 238,000. And sure, in the high grades, they can get quite expensive, but very reasonable, very affordable for the average collector today. And nickels tend to be that way because they, have a very kind of smaller but devout following. Be curious to hear your comments below as to what you think are going to happen with the zeitgeist coins that we see today, particularly the 2024 Jefferson nickel. As always, I appreciate your time and today your expanded attention to get through a 19-minute video. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.